Bob Prupis. He has been in the business for 30 years. He has done plenty of work from G.I. Joe to obviously Transformers. He worked with the Transformers brand for many years, and he's just a whiz at marketing, besides many of his other talents. And we'd also like to introduce Alison Segebarth, who's also been in the marketing business for over 25 years. She's worked for Hasbro, Mattel, Tiger, and a lot of the big boys that are out there in the industry. She worked from 1983 to 1990 with the Transformers brand, and they are here to tell us about the many trials and tribulations and joys of working with this brand. So without further ado, here they are. So let's round of applause.
First of all, it's incredible just to look over this crowd here, paying homage to a product line. Although it's really more than a product line. It's a fantasy concept that was designed for a 9-year-old. But this is the kind of enthusiasm that keeps all of us young and vital and enthusiastic. I think that the main reason that the Transformers was an immediate and a long-term success was the passion that Alison Shinners, she was Shinners when I knew her, Alison brought to the brand. It was a passion that affected everybody who was involved with the continuing development of the line. And it's that the passion that kept the thing alive all these years. As Vice President of Boys Toys at Hasbro, I managed the original introduction in 1983. And with my marketing team and others, developed the positioning and the rationale for the brand. There was a product out of Japan called Diaclones, which was a moderate success in Japan and a failure in the U.S. A product developer by the name of Henry Ornstein brought the concept from a Japanese company called Takara to Hasbro's head of R&D, George Dunsay. I personally, I was VP of Boys Toys at the time, and I fell in love with the magic of the physical transformations. But I felt that the concept was devoid of emotional connection with our target market. I believed that the fantasy needed a logical reason for being, and that's something that the kids could understand and truly relate to. At the time, we already had a relationship with Marvel Comics based on our G.I. Joe. I called a meeting with my marketing team and Marvel's creative group, and after much discussion and rejecting many concepts, we decided to throw out the little men that were in the Diaclone line and were supposed to be the operators of the robots and make the robots themselves the heroes of the line. Working with the comic book writer, Bob Prupis from Marvel, we came up with a rationale that the kids could relate to. So the concept that you all know so well of the Autobots and the Decepticons and how they came to Earth was born. It was an overwhelming success. In fact, in the first year, I forecast a potential sales volume of $30 million. Management fought me on this, and they decided that as a new line, it was too aggressive, and they cut the forecast down to $15 million. We actually sold over $100 million that first year, and a backlog that we could not manufacture of another $70 to $100 million. In the stores, there was a buying feeding frenzy that Christmas. Although there were other similar concepts in the marketplace, the Robots in Disguise campaign was so successful that it led to a leadership position in Boys Toys, creating a high level of awareness by developing unique and appealing personalities for the individual Transformers themselves. As far as the second birth of the Transformers, in 1989, I was transferred to England as Senior Vice President of International Marketing, responsible for all of Hasbro brands in Europe. Transformers was an incredible success in all our European markets. The United States Marketing and R&D Group had decided in 1990 to discontinue the Transformer line and develop no product for 1991. However, as an important segment of the international sales volume and the continuing success of the line, I felt I had to do something. I flew to Tokyo and was able to convince the Japanese who had been creating the new product under U.S. direction that Europe and Asia can do enough volume to make it worthwhile for them. So in 1990, we structured a new marketing and R&D team in Europe to take over the development of the brand. And because of the increasing success of the Transformers in the world marketplace, the U.S. marketing group reintroduced the Transformers in 1993. It's actually a born-again product that is still successful today. Thank you.
Well, all I can say, first of all, is thank you for having us. One of the things that we've been commenting on through the entire day that we walked around and looked at the booths, other than, gee, I remember that, was, can you believe that what we did 20 years ago would hatch this? That there'd still be people interested in that it would grow with you, that it was important enough to last this long and probably continue for hopefully a number of years to come. So it's amazing. I mean, you can think about what you do every day in your everyday lives. And then it was fun, and we had passion about the product, and that's what made the things come to life. But there were the day-to-day distractions and aggravations and problems that you have, with whatever job you do. So the idea that you don't remember those now, you remember the good things, and that it's still alive is fantastic. So I'm glad you're all still enjoying it. One of the things, I came onto the brand at the end of '84, after its first year in the market, right? And it was the feeding frenzy. It was an awesome place to be at Hasbro right then, because it was exploding. They had just bought a company called Milton Bradley, which owned Play School. I was in boys' toys at Play School. I did a product called Bigfoot, Super Monster Trucks. I was a girl in boys marketing, and they absorbed me into their team and put me on a little brand called Transformers, which was exploding. It was a different development pattern than a lot of the products were at Hasbro at that time, because Takara and the Japanese designers and product developers were responsible for all of the toy development of it and worked with us. It was a very much international collaboration. This was before the internet, though. This was we sent out faxes every day. It was before digital photography. It's amazing to me. And now what we could do. Dynamic team. George Dunsay was turned Japanese during that time and went over there frequently. Even got married in Japan. Went a little nuts, frankly. The people that were on the brand, the people that worked with me, the product managers, the packaging people that were in the States, some of the engineers and some of the safety people that were part of the key people, because we had to satisfy U.S. toy safety standards. So it was a small team, but we were dedicated because the product was so cool. We worked very closely with the Marvel people, with Bob Prupis, forcing him, against his will sometimes, to add more characters to the scene. Because we were interested in expanding the toy line. I mean, we watched Bumblebee, the voice of Bumblebee, this morning and thought, well, that's great. I'm sorry that we put you in the background, but we needed to add more characters to the line to make it what it became in its second and third year, a $300 million plus line. It was the beginning of the birth of the super toy brands, and it spawned licensing. We tried to make the licensed products have a higher standard than products had in the past. They had to have an element of transformation in them. It wasn't just enough to do a t-shirt. We wanted t-shirts with heat-sensitive ink so you could see a transformation. We wanted lunch boxes that had some element that was more than what had been there before. When we worked with the agency and challenging them, Griffin Bacall, a name that you may have heard in the past if you're into this, came up with the positioning, the original positioning of robots in disguise, more than meets the eye, which was the tagline that set the tone for everything. But when we challenged them to do more with the advertising, they come up with more and better ideas, turning a boy into a robot, turning kids into what they were doing. Anyway, it was a great place to work. It was a fantastic line to work on. I'm looking forward to hearing what some of your questions are. And asking you right now to remember that this was 20 years ago, so that... Well, I've been studying a little bit. There may be some flaws in my memory. But anyway, why don't we open it up to questions? Because I'm hoping that each and every one of you played with these toys. So you didn't start out as little adult collectors and 5-year-old, t-shirts and figures. That you remember the fun things about it.
That's right. In fact, I have to thank all of you. My retirement has been very, very comfortable.
Why don't we go ahead?
If you could just speak up, then the microphone is on.
We'll repeat it.
What I'd like to know is, how do you find out what your target audience wants? Because it changes, like, over time. Like, what kids want now is very different than what we really wanted at our age. Well, when we were their age, sorry. And so it's like, how do you find out what your target audience wants? You know, do you have people go out and see what the do you research it, or do you just go, okay, they like this, let's put it out?
I'd like to say that it was perfect, but yeah. What she's asking is how do we as marketers know what kids want? If I had that answer perfectly down, I wouldn't be here. I would be retired too. And funny, when you research with kids, especially kids in a 5 to 9-year-old age bracket, do you like this? Yeah. Why? Because you don't get a lot usually out of talking directly to kids for free. You get a lot out of watching them, how they play with something, what they're doing, how they get into something. You can't, you're working a year and a half ahead of time a lot of times, so that a lot of the other factors that come into play.
We had study groups all around the country, and we would go to all different parts of the country with kids in the room with product and just see how they reacted to the product.
One of the things that we noticed right away about Transformers, and maybe you would bear it out, there were a lot of different levels that this appealed to. And the first that appealed to almost everybody was that it was a puzzle. It was more than just, they play with it as a car, is it an action figure, is it a vehicle, what is it? It was the intricacy of the puzzle and the fact that as a kid you could do it, but your parents couldn't have been able to. Nobody could. I mean, when you'd have an exec come in, somebody above us, you'd give them a sound blaster, a blaster, right? The boom box, because that was the easiest one in the line. Here, you can do this one, and they'd feel accomplished and walk away and leave you alone. They didn't know what they were doing. If you really wanted to pee them off that day, you'd give them a triple changer and say, here. The original Transformer line, which was developed by the Takara brand as a diachrome, were the best puzzles ever, I think. I don't know what the current line is, but they were almost like Rubik's Cube. And you think about it at that time, that was something that was in the psyche of the country at that time. So we talk to kids. You look at them, you watch how they play, you try and get other little signals, and sometimes it all comes together.
I just have a question for somebody like myself that has a marketing degree and wants to get into Hasbro or another toy company. I've applied to several things, and you never usually get your foot in the door. How do you get your foot in the door at a company like that?
There's a long story how Alison got her foot into Hasbro. Actually, during Toy Fair, she was with high school at the time.
Right.
And I was very impressed with the presentation she had made. And at that time, we had just Transformers were really just starting with Transformers, and it already consensus that it was going to be too big for me to be able to handle by myself and the team that I had put together for G.I. Joe. And it was just two monster brands that I was facing. I needed somebody strong who could handle it, and Alison really impressed me. So I tried to recruit her after I went after her and asked her to come to work for Hasbro. Well, I got to think about it. I got to see what kind of people I'm working for. So I said, well, let's think about it. After I called her again. She said, well, come on out to Chicago and we'll talk, right? So she put me through the ringer. Actually, she took me into her favorite bar, made me do upside-down shooters. She finally said, well,
Yeah, that was twisting his arm, really.
So I finally said, I guess these people must be okay. I'll go to work for them.
So it was kind of like that. It was, I mean, the way I got to Hasbro actually was they bought me. Literally, they bought, I was working for Play School, which was owned by Milton Bradley. Some Phantom company made a run on that company, and as a, you know, it was when takeovers were just starting, and Hasbro was the savior for Milton Bradley, so they couldn't take, they took them instead of a hostile takeover, they, quote, merged with Hasbro, and it was the best thing that ever happened to that company, because they did more dynamic marketing and more creative things, and Bob did try and recruit me, and I was shaky. I didn't know these people. I didn't know if I wanted to move from the Chicago area all the way to Rhode Island. Is that a state, really? but it was a phenomenal area, and I really love it, and I learned so much. But your question was, okay, how do I break into marketing or product development at a toy company? And now, persistence helps. Going in through another avenue, through sales, through whatever way you can get into a company. I mean, it's a tough market right now for any toy company. The market has evolved, it's changing. There's a story in the books, and it's true. There's a guy named Vinnie D'Alleva who should be here today by rights. Unfortunately, his daughter had a tonsillectomy that I was like, okay, fine. But and he had tried to get in repeatedly. He was from the area. You know, it's luck and timing sometimes. You know, there's an opportunity, you know somebody, you don't know somebody, you don't need to know somebody sometimes. And couldn't do it. Took another job in the toy company, but always had his eye out for where he ultimately wanted to be. He came in with on an interview, didn't even want to see him. I think I had my car battery died that day, so by the time I got in, I was not really happy. And this guy pulls out his master's thesis on robots, and I'm like, okay, I got it crazy. Don't know. But his drive and enthusiasm and what you portray in an interview is what you want to do. I mean, frankly, the worst thing you can say to some people in a toy, why do you want to be in this company? Why do you want this position? Because I love kids. Is like, great, but we're in business, see? We want to sell things to kids. I mean, not in a nasty way, but, well, okay, maybe a little bit, but you know, keep trying. You know, find out what they want. Don't have a backup plan. Go to other companies too. I mean, marketing experience is good. Even if you can't get into toys right away, get something that'll translate. Kids' candies, advertising. You know, maybe that's the most direct way, and make the most out of what you get when you get there. I mean, my first stop was on bacon and hot dogs, which, I don't know. And I liked them as something else, so it was experience.
Yeah, actually, you have to understand, for the corporations and the companies themselves, the whole direction, the whole point is the bottom line. They're looking for a profit so that they can be a successful company for its stockholders, etc. The difference at Hasbro at that time was the fact that I talked before about the passion that Alison brought. And it's true. It became not just a product, but it truly became a passion. We got intimately involved with every product. We were concerned with every little detail, not only the engineering and the packaging. The packaging was critical as well. So there was that kind of spirit and passion behind everything that we did at the company. And that's what made those brands long-lasting brands.
It's easier with toys, admittedly, but if you can do it, whatever you're working on, it's, the guys that can make me go nuts about a thermos, like, wow, and this is what I did then, and this is what I did. It's a win-win. I mean, if you're doing it for everybody. Go ahead.
The decision to separate Battle Beasts from Transformers as a line, do you remember the rule?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, fire, wind, and water.
Yeah, well, you know how in Japan it was related to the headmaster's thing? Why did you make the decision to separate the two lines? Or did you make it, or was it made before it came to you?
It wasn't presented to us as part of the trend. I mean, when we would go look at, we would go to Takara frequently and look at all of their products, girls' toy, anything they were developing. And we were their first major, collaboration very successfully, so we were looking at everything they did. I don't know how fully formed the idea of Battle Beast was within the Transformers line. We saw it as not related. Bob came up with the concept of rock, paper, scissors and adding that to the Battle Beast. They used to have a heat-sensitive sticker like the Autobots or Decepticons, but it would reveal one of three symbols, fire, wood, or water. And I forget what.
Yeah, actually, we were a little bit ahead of our time because what you have today the big thing, of course, are the card games that the kids play. And in a sense, it was trying to do a card game with a three-dimensional object that was interesting to look at. And it was moderately successful at the time, but it really wasn't designed for part of the Transformer line.
It was, if you remember a fun story, because it was a great concept. They were collectibles. Remember the decoys that we used, I think it was in the second or third year as a collectibles, because those were, there was a concept called Muscle from Mattel on USLE, and there were a series of collectible figures. We did the Transformers one. The Battle Beasts were kind of, when we did them, we thought it was more like that, more novelty, more collectible. And as part of the commercial, there was an animation where water, beats fire, water without fire. And they showed a big torrential downpour, and we got a call from a consumer that her kid was playing with all of his Battle Beasts in the water, and all the labels washed off and ended up on the kid. And she wanted to know if there was any toxics in them. And if we heard a child, we said, no, it was more soap and water and get the glue off of them. But, sometimes we saw things from an American perspective that, it was the difference between the Japanese perspective and the American perspective, so we just didn't see it as part of the Transformers line. But we saw it as a neat idea and applied something else to make it different. I'm going to move to the back. Oh, I'm sorry. You're doing it. Great.
I actually have two questions. You mentioned the changes from Diaclone to Transformers and removing the drivers. What else was involved, i.e. changing them to make them more appealing or conforming to safety regulations?
We had to re-engineer it to a certain extent, but the magic of the transformations itself were there. And we also used different products than actually were in the Diaclone line. Because when you develop a line, you look at price points. And they really just were putting out a line of product, period. Without any real thought to it. And what we wanted to do is I wanted to have stuff at a very low price point. That's why we had the little cassettes. And we had, Bumblebee and over there. And then a medium-sized price and then a higher price item when we came up with Optimus Prime, which was the top of the line because it was a matter of price point. So we look at it in terms of price points as well.
Kind of an easy way to enter into a collection. And then once you're
we adjusted it, but the point is we saw the engineering and the development that Takara had done as far as doing these transformations, and they were sensational.
But there was a certain amount of what was U.S. safety regulations, and because it was Hasbro and Mattel often have higher safety regulations because they're bigger targets, and they were becoming a bigger target. So they went the extra level to make sure in torque and tension and small parts issues and things like that. There were some, I was reminded, there were some spring-loaded weapons at the time, and that was removed because of the Hasbro policy as much as anything, as well as a safety issue, so that, we become a choking hazard at some point. But that was the primary reasons to change. And then, color selection and, making the characters come out more.
And my second question, I'm obviously from England. The 90 to 93 line is, I'm very familiar with it, and it's thrown up a lot of questions to the fans, especially around some of the Action Master figures. When you chose to continue the line in Europe, were the products previously already been designed by Takara? They were all new designs?
No, they were all new designs. We did that because we had a year's grace up front. We were able to do it in 90, to come out with it for 91, because we knew the U.S. was not developing products in 90 to 91. So we're working a year and a half in advance all the time. So actually it was my group from England that we flew out to Tokyo, and we sat down with the Takara people, and we designed a line based on price points and concepts first. And then we had them develop some product that had the transformation that we were looking for. And it was a collaborative operation that went back and forth. We really got the product that felt was right for the marketplace. The reason, I always kid the guys back in the States, I was in England at the time, that they brought the line back is I think they were simply embarrassed that we were so successful after they were going to drop the line. I think the president of the company started getting on their back and said, we're going to do something.
Just walking around with the microphone. Go for it, the red shirt.
There was such a bold transition between the movie and the actual original series. I was wondering if you could just reflect on that. What were you thinking? What was going on? The market?
It wasn't us.
No,
Okay.
no, I like it. I commend you for that. I was a young guy at the time. I thought it was the greatest thing.
Yeah,
so I wonder if you could reflect on
the
that.
individual weekly shows were really designed to sell product. I mean, let's face it, they're trying to create the excitement, trying to get the kids really involved, so that they looked at it more than just a toy. They really got involved with the product line itself. The movie was a concept that we figured, I don't know, let's see if we can make some money in the movies. It was such an exciting thing. The line was so big. So the agency ran with it, and they got a lot of outside writers. They did not work with all of the Marvel people. They had a couple of Marvel people involved. I'm not quite sure everybody was in it, and they developed the entire movie. They came to us, Alison and I, for advice on certain things. Could we do this? Can we do that? And we could,
They didn't take the advice. It was a big. The movies became. They also came out with the My Little Pony movie. I'm not sure why Transformers the movie was first, because G.I. Joe was down the line, and G.I. Joe got aborted. That plan probably because the movie was bad. Anyway. Part of the crux of it was that some key agency people from Griffin Bacall and Sunbow, and they were in the movie business, but they were separate from the Marvel, Bob Budiansky and the team that developed the storyline. So they went off in a different direction. Takara then, they did an initial sketch of a character or cell, and then Takara was we worked with Takara to try and make something that supported that, but because it was backwards from how they usually work, sometimes the transformations weren't as good. It wasn't as satisfying as a core product. There were some issues within the company. I mean, the people that worked on the product line didn't appreciate the fact that they killed Optimus Prime, and we thought it was wrong. It could have been a bold move. I mean, it could have been dramatic, but didn't have the same effect as when Spock got one, It wasn't as satisfying for us. And then that year we had basically double the work, because we had the regular line, and then we had movie product too. I mean, the movie it was neat. There were neat elements about it. It was visual. It was more than we'd ever done, but it wasn't as satisfying a product.
But for the agency and for the corporation, it was a profit-making operation, because they felt that regardless of how the movie would do in the theaters, and if it didn't do that well, they still had all the film that they could break, which they eventually broke up into small segments. And what they would do is they would give these segments to the various stations, and in exchange, get advertising time. So even though you couldn't actually see the profit, it was really very profitable in the long run for the corporation.
Yeah, if it would have worked, it would have been phenomenal. Well.
That's right there.
Well, actually, you answered a lot of what I was going to ask about. You mentioned in I was reading your bio in the program about how you felt like, geez, nothing did more to hurt the line than the lack of detail. It struck me, yes, there was less detail, but man, I think you probably got a room full of people that know just about every line of that movie. I was surprised to hear you say, boy, we hated that movie. So that was a lot of what my question was. I have a lot of little questions. I'll leave them open-ended. I want to hear more about your collaborations with Hasbro, or Takara in Japan. Tell us about some ideas that they were really excited about maybe, and you thought, no. Things of that sort. I'd love to hear more about that.
They generally were directed based on price points. I mean, they had some incredible engineers, some young men, very young group, all right? And they were developing just exciting transformations. But some of the transformations did not turn into a satisfying final product. The transformations were okay, but the robot didn't look right, or the vehicle didn't look quite right, although the actual transformations were really magic. But those are the things we rejected because we felt that we had to truly relate to each individual product, and we wanted to make sure that there was a real personality to the product. And if we couldn't see a way to develop a personality to the product, we'd have to let it go. And sometimes also, the cost of it became ridiculous, so we couldn't do it. We had to find a way to get a better price point. So.
There's a lot of pressure, and working with Takara was phenomenal because they were so responsive. You know, I mean, on their own, they developed things. They would make a comment. You know, we're there for a week at a time, and in the morning you'd say something, and in the afternoon you'd have some guy come back into the room with 16 drawings. Well, if you don't like this, how about this, this, and this? So it was great to work with them. You know, some things you're right on, some things you're wrong. They were dynamic. And they had, there was a man named Yoki-san. He actually came and worked with us in the States for about six months, 1 year. He and his wife, I mean, as a Takara, he didn't work for Hasbro on other things. He worked there as almost like an exchange program, but you know, was totally, you know, the work style difference.
You want to get the
so
American viewpoint and the American
to try and
attitude
understand, you know, why, what made us tick. I don't know if they could ever figure it out or appreciate it, but they were much more astute in trying to study it.
Let's see, there's some people in the back there.
I had two questions. My first question is, although the product line in the U.S., the first wave lasted through 1990, the television show ended in 1987. So I was wondering why you chose to stop that particular avenue. And the second is the product lines in Japan and the U.S. diverged pretty wildly in 89 and 90, even though the U.S. still had a strong line going. So I was wondering what the thought process was behind that.
So the first question would be, why did the television show stop in 87?
That's right.
The money, the funds to put new shows into the mix to make it still viable for the syndication market weren't allocated to it, basically.
Corporation attention went elsewhere, basically. And also, attention was starting to wane anyway at that time. As I said, in 1990 they decided they were not going to produce a line for 1991 Transformers. They were going to drop the line. So there was a whole lot of, I left the company around 88, I went over here, 88, 89, I went over to Europe, so, you know, I wasn't involved at that point on what their thinking was. I was only concerned and very nervous when everybody dropped the line.
So, in terms of, yeah, it was frustrating to be on the brand and not have lifeblood. I don't want to say we were taking advantage of what had gone on and hoped to keep some of that momentum going, but without some fresh programming that would have helped it. It made it harder to syndicate it. They were looking for new things, and there was kind of a shift in what the culture was looking for. Right around then was when Ninja Turtles came out, so things were more on a humorous, much more wacky bent, and Transformers and G.I. Joe were more serious. So, you know, we tried to evolve a little bit, but we couldn't. I think your second question was, why did the Japanese line vary so differently? Takara was the true Japanese company. They learned, I mean, they were sponges, they absorbed, they took what they needed, what they believed they could apply to their market, and they took our marketing and used it in Japan. First time around, that wasn't the way they did it, but they saw what was successful for their market, and they used it there, and then they continued on. So they had the rights to do that there. You know, we fed each other with a symbiotic relationship, but the way we would be able to say something, we don't think that's going to work in the U.S. market, or at least not on a mass scale, they said, it's going to work in Japan, it will. You know, so.
And they could do certain things in Japan that we couldn't do. First of all, they could create fantasy on their commercials. That was absolutely illegal in the United States. when you do a U.S. commercial, it has to be real to a certain extent. You create a fantasy attitude, but you have to understand that when you get down to it, what you're seeing on TV is real, and you can go into the store and you can buy it, and that's how it's going to function. They took stuff, and what they did with their product line was impossible for them. You know, they had stuff actually flying without you holding it, and like that. So they get away with it.
It was a different culture too. I mean, kids played with toys longer to an older age in Japan. I mean, the books that they had to support the fantasy went beyond what our market would accept. You know, it was right, you know, that you cater to your audience, and they were able to.
All right, thank you both for coming. I really appreciate hearing from Hasbro's past as well as what's coming up in the future. I have two questions. One, where did the ideas for the Autobot and the Decepticon insignias come from? You know, what prompted you to find those? What gave you those ideas? And also, some of my favorite figures was from the 86 and up, the Headmasters, Target Masters, Masters in general, except for Action Masters. Where did the idea for Masters come from as far as creation? And is there a RC mold sitting somewhere in the vault of Hasbro that was never created? And why not eliminating the girl figure for that time?
Okay, I think I got them all. So first question was, where did the Autobot and Decepticon logos come from? You got to take that one.
Yeah, well, actually, that was a collaboration between Marvel Comics, between Griffin and McCall, and between my marketing group at the very first year, which was a very small group, because it was, we're introducing the original product. We worked in terms of packaging that would work, in terms of the look that would appeal to the kids. We did a lot of research on that. We were always around the country trying to find out what we think would work. And these were simply decisions that me and my marketing group took, and thank God it worked. And then Alison came on board. From then on, it was dynamite. She really took it.
Yeah, you can go to other things, actually. One of your other questions was, where did the Masters series come from? Headmasters, Target Masters. We're kind of a, what's the next step? It was, you know, brainstorming. It was, can we bring back those little people that we tossed out from the first year? And I use that probably too loosely. You know, there was safety issues with them. We didn't think it, but it was the idea of how do we, what's the next step? And that was one of the brainstorming issues that came back that had some merit that we could figure out, that they could figure out, Takara being, how do we put it into the product? The idea of being able to plug them in and having their tech specs show up in the chest of the robot. You know, there was some interaction between the characters. It brought it to life, and it just seemed like a good thing when we talked to kids, as we did periodically. That was one of the hot buttons, so it was a concept that worked, and we tried to extend it into all the price points. So
all the product didn't come from Takara, by the way. I was going to Hong Kong, and you go into a Hong Kong toy fair, and you'd have every knockoff guy in the world, every tiny little manufacturer trying to knock off the Transformers. Well, occasionally there'd be a product that some little guy would come out with that was terrific. There was a gun, a weapon that was functioning as a water pistol at one time. There was one that just functioned as a great-looking gun that would look terrific and turned into a great robot. Well, we took these little guys and said, hey, wait a second, don't try and distribute it, don't try and move it. We'll move it into the Transformer line. We made deals with them, and we did it that way. So any product that really looked good, looked exciting, we didn't care where it came from. We did some work with Bandai. We've been working with other people. and we took a few products that looked right for our line.
That was strategic though too, because the idea was when you're working with Japanese culture, to keep your enemies close, Bandai was doing the robots line. So to have an in with them, they didn't know what we were doing, but we had some way to get into them, was one of the strategies. And George Dunsay was a component of that. I mean, he was in Japan a lot, working, trying to establish relationships on many product levels, not just Transformers, with a lot of the companies. I'm sorry, I kind of, what was your third? I think you had a third one.
Not just, the art, the question about RC, you know, why it wasn't made as far as it being a girl and a boy's toy line, was it actually a molding issue?
Despite all of my efforts, I could not sell the idea that girls would sell.
It's terrific because I look over this crowd and about 30–40% are females here. But
yeah, I told them I was just the tip of the iceberg, girls, and no, they because there were a couple of female figures in G.I. Joe that just didn't pull their weight in the assortment. Sometimes management gets a up at their butt and they say, nope, not going to go. So
it will sell to anybody who would buy it. So
they just didn't think the audience was big enough. And frankly, the collector's audience hadn't grown as much or hadn't gotten as much appreciation at that point. So they probably could have gotten them on that angle, but it didn't have the realization that it was out there then.
Yes, I just wanted to ask for each of you, perhaps what was one of each of your maybe greatest achievements, and then also maybe a disappointment that each of you had in regards to the line, maybe something that you wanted to bring to the line, or something that you tried and couldn't bring to the line, things like that.
my greatest disappointment was when I got promoted to Senior Vice President in charge of international marketing. I was no longer involved with the line per se, because most of the development was going on in the U.S., and I just pulled away from it. It just so happened, because of that, when the U.S. dropped it, of course, I got very excited. Hey, I put my team on it.
Yeah, I would say my biggest disappointment was not being able to come up with the spark that would, without programming, without, the product spark, that would let us continue it. They had responsibility for G.I. Joe and other things in the line at that point at the end. And the company had shifted priorities a little bit too, so it was frustrating because you poured a good part of my career and passion into this thing, and then admittedly was excited about working on new products and new opportunities that weren't related to it, but I couldn't come up with it. The team that I left working on it could, and then it was working against what was wanted, so that was my biggest frustration. But the fact that the concept itself, the core concept was so strong, and you're all here proving that it could come back again, it made even more satisfaction than anything we did the first time around. Let's get the microphone.
You were just coming out of high school and you're going into college and you want to get into toy design, what kind of courses would you take? It might not be, you guys are more into marketing, but...
Yeah,
we're very product development.
We're involved with everything in it. I'll tell you, I think first of all you have to take areas of engineering, and
honestly, back in the dark ages when I was there, industrial design is an excellent start into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of computer-aided design would be a great in for toy designers now. There's so many avenues that they get into, and they pull from a wide variety of resources. There's sculptors in there, people with good ideas, people with brainstorming.
I don't think you can learn in college, we're both college graduates and advanced college degrees, but how to be a product developer. That's something that comes from within you. You have to just be a tinkerer. I mean, you have to be somebody who wants to create new things. It doesn't matter what it is.
But you can't, it was with anything. You can learn
Well, you need-
elements that could help you
Right,
do that.
you need to know design elements, you have to know art elements, you have to know engineering elements, all the things all together to help you do those things that you want to do.
And then do whatever you want to do.
Down in the front here.
Gentleman
Oh.
back here, yeah, microphone, I'll bring it back.
Hi, I actually have a couple of questions. Going back to the beginning when you were talking about interacting with Takara and other companies, were you guys involved at all when you got a new mold to say, okay, is this going to be an Autobot or a Decepticon? What made you decide this robot is evil or not? That's one question. The second one was what I really liked about the first couple of lines, and I remember when I was about 4 or 5,
Yeah.
is these were cars and these were items that you would see on the street. And then 86 and beyond, they pretty much became futuristic, different designs that no longer had that touch to them.
Well, you understand, it's limited to how many, the auto industry itself just wasn't coming up with new cars. I mean, just little adaptations of the old ones. And you understand how it originally started. I mean, we looked at, the biggest problem that I have relative to Diacons itself is why would a robot be an automobile? I mean, and that was where the discussions with Yansky and with the agency and everything else came about. That's where we decided we were going to have good guys and bad guys. That's where we decided there's got to be a reason for it. So we developed a storyline. The storyline of how they got to Earth and how when they finally woke up, they sent out the spies and they looked and they saw these robots saw metallic creatures and they figured they were the characters, they were the people of this particular planet. And so they came back and their scientists had them so they could be in disguised as the individual characters of Earth, which they thought were the automobiles and the trucks and stuff like that. And so we try to root it in something that kids can actually understand and say, oh yeah, that's a reason why you've got a truck, it's a robot, you've got a vehicle, it's a robot. Eventually, though, you run out of local designs from U.S. automakers because they just weren't doing it still. So.
Well, and we wanted to have variety too, so that if you're transforming, there's only some way you're going to do a car, so the idea of pushing it beyond was something Takara and we thought was, gave the line variety. That's when you expand to over 300 products, you're going to get a little repetitious in some areas and you're going to try different things to see if they work. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Expanding the line into animals, into dinosaurs, into what else can we transform to make sense with the character, the storyline that makes sense to what a kid would like. I'm sorry. I think one of your questions was how was it decided that cars were Autobots, other than the name, and then planes were Decepticons? Well, what made a robot evil?
Oh, yeah, well, actually, that was simple. I mean, it was simply a matter of balancing the line. I mean, you had good guys and you had bad guys, and you wanted to make sure that the kids were going to buy everything. And so what you did is you simply try to find balance to the line and a reason to purchase each one. So you couldn't make everything overly weighted on one side or the other side. So you try to do a mix that makes sense in terms of storyline as well in terms of product.
Hi, I'm wondering if you're involved in the product right now, or like they ask you questions about it, like.
No, unfortunately, not. Fortunately, I've been retired now for a few years, and I spend my time swimming, traveling, and I sculpt. So I do sculpting and stuff like that. So I'm not involved in the line, except that I watch it all the time. I still have stock in the company, and I get concerns.
I'm no longer with the company. I left in 1992, and even though I still have, some people that are still there and still keep in touch with the has-beens, as we call ourselves, people who have left Hasbro. I'm not involved in toys anymore. I left the toy business about a year ago and went into, I now work for a company called Lava World, and I'm Vice President of Marketing for Lava Lamps. So I think it's got a nice parity with what I was doing before, so.
Hi, thanks for coming today. And thank you for asking or answering all the questions. I was about 10 years old when the Transformers first came out, and I think for my first birthday I got Skywarp, who was the Black Decepticon jet. And from then on, it was just magic, and I'm 29 now, pushing 30, it's kind of scary. But,
What's scary is that I sell toys to you.
in some form or another, Transformers have been with me throughout that time. More involved at some points than others, but I honestly don't see a point in my life or the rest of my life where I'm not involved with Transformers. It's something that's intertwined with me on a mental level, physical level, emotional level. It's just the fantasy and the entertainment of it, the hope, the role models, fight against evil, all that stuff that kids love. I still feel all that inside, and I want to thank you for that, for your participation, for your part in that, as well as what others did, and that's about it, really.
That's all right. A number of years right now. If you walked into my office at home, half the wall are Transformer pictures, and the other half are G.I. Joe. I have a split personality because I was also responsible for G.I. Joe. So it was two major successes.
Yeah, and I thank you. I mean, it's nice to hear that. It should be totally understood. Despite the egos in any situation, it was more than one person. It was more than himself or myself, Chikara, or anything else. It was Camelot. It was the convergence of all those things coming together, and the team that came together. And when somebody was stuck, somebody else could continue it. The dynamic of working off. Everybody else made everybody else's ideas better.
Yeah, we can cross over. Even though we had a G.I. Joe team and a Transformer team. When somebody in Transformers got stuck, the guy from G.I. Joe would
we were boys.
and the other would go back, we'd go back and forth. So it was really a total department. It was really, it was very gratifying. It was a lot of fun working there.
I'd just like to ask, what happens to all the molds from the toys when you're done making them, manufacturing?
The ballast to the ship? I really don't know.
We wore some of them out.
Yeah, some
in the first 2 years, we had to go back in and make new tools because after a million pieces, it's rare sometimes, but you can actually wear a mold out.
You're talking about it was a monster brand. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of product that was sold in a very short period of time. And
theoretically, though, because it is a corporate event, corporate happening, those tools are cataloged in a warehouse someplace in China or Japan or wherever, and they're assets to the company. The value may be written off, but they still have them. One of the things that you've noticed is that sometimes with this market, you get to bring things back in their original form, so they may be retired, but then brought back as a special edition, or one of the greatest things they ever did on G.I. Joe was come back with a line called Tiger Force, which started using existing tooling that wasn't lost, and the lost mold theory, I've never heard that one, but
change the paint job.
they go and they come back out. Use pieces and parts.
My second question is, Hasbro and Takara, I know, has to retool some of the molds so they can be released again legally, like sharpening the stacks on Optimus Prime and stuff. Is it possible, to release something that say it's, not for kids, it's a collector's thing, it's an adult only thing?
Yes, it's possible. They have every once in a while they'll do a special for a particular type of retailer, but we're not involved with that anymore with the company, so I'm not quite sure what their policy is at this moment. But in the past, we've taken out an individual product, and we've done it, say, for Target only, it was a special, and they would handle it as a collector's item only. And so we've done that both in G.I. Joe and in Transformers as individual items. We make minor changes, we do paint jobs, we do change names, change attitudes a little bit.
If it wasn't safe for a child, if it didn't meet the safety standards, though, even if you said it was for an adult collector, but still marketed it through a child's marketing, you couldn't do that. I mean, if you could do that, you'd get in trouble for doing that. So they wouldn't do it. They're not that kind of a risk averse. They're risk averse versus challenger.
Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I was just wondering if you could offer us any specifics, if you have them, on the whole thought process involved on bringing the Macross Valkyrie into the Transformer line with Jetfire. If you were involved with that. And I have another question for you. Working for Hasbro, did you have exclusive merchandise that was put out just for maybe the employees only, or?
No, although there was merchandise done just for particular conventions at certain times. Like I said, there were individual specials that were done for an individual retailer, Toys R Us or Target or something like that. But there was nothing. Nobody could take a tool and develop something just for an individual person.
Let's take just 2 more questions. We need to end the panel about 4:30, so they've got time to sign some things and make sure we stay relatively on time. Jose, you got one back here?
I'm wondering how you came up with the idea for the combiners, and again, which molds went to the Autobots and which molds went to the Decepticons?
I wasn't involved.
I don't remember the combiners. When were they? Unless I missed.
Constructicons.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Huh? Aerial bots, all the team concepts. The first one was Constructicon. We made Devastator. That started out as a Takara idea. You know, I mean, they were taking puzzles to new levels. But it also was influenced by, there's a product in the market at that time called Voltron.
Yeah.
That combined into a giant super.
Yeah, again.
So there were many elements that, you know, kind of led
It was
everything.
bringing a price point. It was something that could be advertised well and bringing it at a great price point for big dollars.
It stimulated collectability, you know, you wanted to collect all 6 to get the right one, and so that was successful, so when one thing is successful, you repeat it in other areas and give them more. Go on.
Okay. I thought it was rather interesting how you said the movie was somewhat disappointing to you. I just wanted to know.
Me personally.
I just wanted to know what was your reaction when you guys heard Spike say shit for the first time?
I was for it. In fact, I'll tell you, we're also, at the same time, we had been doing the G.I. Joe movie, and we were going to have Zarina come out nude in one of the scenes.
In his fantasy.
And actually, I was with the agency wanted to do it, and I was with them 100%, because we really wanted to get away from the G rating and have a PG rating instead. Basically, that was it. It could sell more movies and in better time slots if we had a PG rather than a G rating. And that's what that's all about.
It was a marketing ploy.
Some movie, that's all.
Yeah, it'll appeal to a teen audience. I'm sorry.
I think with that, we're going to have to wrap it up. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Bob and Alison. If anybody wants any autographs, come up here along the left side of the stage. If anybody wants any, we'll be signing autographs till 5 o'clock. Anybody wants any autographs, come up here on the left side of the stage, signing until 5 o'clock.